3 red woolen scarves. That was the last thing the town of Blackwood, Maine, saw of them. 3 bright, blood-red lines cutting through a blinding, historic white blizzard. Then the snow swallowed them whole. No screams, no tire marks, no struggle. It was as if the earth had simply opened up and taken them in. For 21 years, the town believed the cold had claimed them. They were wrong. The storm didn't kill those girls. The horror of that night was much warmer, much closer to home. And the truth? The truth wasn't frozen in the woods. It was sitting in a sealed, forgotten envelope, waiting in the dark for over 2 decades. The date of the disappearance was November 12, 1998. The sky over the Atlantic coast had turned the color of bruised iron. The wind was already snapping the branches of the ancient pines. At exactly 3:45 in the afternoon, Zoe Miller, her twin sister Chloe, and their best friend Abigail Ward walked out of Blackwood High School. They were 17. They were bright. They were wearing their matching red drama club scarves. They had a 600-yard walk to Abigail's house, a 10-minute journey. They never made it. The police searched the forests for months. They dragged the freezing depths of Blackwood Lake. They found nothing. Over the next 21 years, the families either died of grief or packed their bags and left, leaving Blackwood to do what small, isolated towns do best: forget. But the past in Maine is like the tide. It always comes back to the shore. In the grey October of 2019, an old, dying man named Arthur Pendleton was clearing out his basement. Arthur had spent 30 years of his life carrying the mail through the freezing coastal roads of Blackwood. He was in the final stage of lung cancer, sorting through the ghosts of his own house when he found his old leather mailbag in a damp corner. The bag was cracked, mouldy, and smelling of dry rot. Deep inside the torn fabric of the inner lining, Arthur's trembling fingers brushed against something stiff. A letter, never delivered, never opened.
I carried this bag every single morning in 1998. How did I miss this?
On the yellowed paper, written in a frantic, desperate hand, was the address: Blackwood Sheriff's Department. Urgent. The postmark on the faded stamp read March 9th, 1999, 4 months after the girls had vanished. With shaking hands, the old man tore the envelope open. Inside was a single piece of lined notebook paper. The words were typed on an old typewriter, but the panic on the page was alive.
I know what happened to Zoe, Chloe, and Abby on that terrible night in November. The truth is a sin bitter enough to burn this town to the ground. If you want justice, stop looking at the sky and start looking beneath the earth. I can only write this now because the silence is eating away at my soul like acid. Signed, Z.
Arthur Pendleton fell to his knees. He had been on the search party in '98. He had held the hands of the weeping mothers. He realized, in that freezing basement, that he had been carrying the key to the town's darkest mystery in his own bag for 21 years. He drove to the station himself, clutching the steering wheel with the last of his fading strength. It's the final letter he would ever deliver. The letter landed on the desk of Detective David Cole. Cole was a state investigator, newly transferred to Blackwood, and still considered a complete outsider. In a town where everyone was related and everyone kept each other's secrets, Cole was the only man who had no reason to lie. He opened the thick, dusty folder of case number 1998-1112.
Zoe and Chloe Miller, the wealthy lumber mill owner's golden twins, and Abigail Ward, the lonely carpenter's daughter. All three gone in a single afternoon.
Did Cole look at the yellowed letter from 1999? Then he looked back at the Polaroid of Zoe Miller. She had a soft, protective smile, holding her sister's hand. If Zoe had disappeared with the others on that fateful night, who had survived long enough to mail a letter 4 months later? Who was Z? To find the writer of that letter, David Cole didn't need to look at the highway or the bus stations. He had to look at the school. He had to look at the last thing they did together before they soft today. A cancelled school play. To most people, that would mean naming York, a publicity, a nervous principal, bad timing. But Cape-aged Cole had spent 15 years learning one simple rule. Towns don't cancel plays about the greed being buried alive by accident. Not one day before, 3 girls disappear into the snow. He needed to know who gave that order and why. The drama club's records had been sitting untouched in a rusted filing cabinet for 21 years. Inside, a manila folder tied with a faded black ribbon. Old Polaroids, a casting sheet annotated in a teacher's careful handwriting.
Abigail Ward, cast as Antigone. Chloe Miller, cast as Ismene, the sister who obeys instead of fights. Somebody who wanted the lead role badly enough to hate the girl who got it.
One name kept surfacing in the margins of every file. Thomas Vance, the school's literature teacher. A Harvard graduate from Boston, 12 years older than most of his students would ever be. Charismatic, beloved, trusted with the school's most vulnerable kids, the ones nobody else seemed to notice. David drove out to find the one woman who had watched it all happen from the front row.
I wondered when someone would finally come, Detective. 21 years is a long time to wait for a question you already know the answer to.
Tell me about Thomas Vance.
He had a gift, you know, for finding the lonely ones. Abby, who lost her mother and had a father who barely spoke. And Chloe. Everyone assumes Chloe had everything. The wealthy family, the twin sister everyone adored. But nobody in that house ever came to watch her rehearse. Not once. Zoe was the good daughter. Chloe was just extra.
It was the first time anyone had described Chloe Miller as anything other than a jealous, dangerous girl. David leaned forward.
Thomas noticed that. He always did. He'd stay late with her after rehearsal, tell her she had a fire in her that the world wasn't ready for. It wasn't love, Detective. Love doesn't need an audience of one, kept secret, fed only in empty classrooms after the sun goes down. It was a leash. He just handed her a prettier one than he gave Abby.
You knew this, all of it, and you said nothing for 21 years.
I told myself it was a schoolgirl crush. I told myself the locked classroom door was about focus. I told myself so many things, Detective, because the alternative was admitting I let it happen under my own roof. The day before the girls disappeared, the principal canceled the play. He said a parent complained about the script's rebellious content. That was never true. It was Thomas. He shut the play down himself, because on that stage, in front of the whole town, the truth might have slipped out of Abby's mouth whether she meant it to or not.
Silence, David was beginning to understand, was never just the absence of speaking. In Blackwood, it was a system. One adult's convenient lie, passed down until it became the whole town's alibi. There was only one place left where that system hadn't reached. The bedroom of a girl who never got the chance to grow up. The Ward house had sat empty since Abby's father took his own life 2 years after she vanished. The locals called it cursed. David called it the last place anyone had bothered to search properly. Upstairs, behind a door with a pastel sign that read, Abby's World, dust lay undisturbed across 21 winters. He searched for 3 hours and found nothing, until he sat down on the window bench overlooking the black water of the lake and felt something hard beneath the cushion.
This seam's been re-sewn, badly, by someone in a hurry.
He cut the thread with his pocket knife. Inside the stuffing, his fingers closed around a small, navy leather book. Its cover stamped in gold letters, worn almost smooth. My diary. Eleanor had told him what Thomas Vance did to these girls in the open, one classroom at a time. But this book would tell him what he did to them in the dark, one entry at a time, in Abby Ward's own handwriting, and in words she never lived long enough to say out loud. Episode 3. Abby's Diary. A diary doesn't perform for an audience. It doesn't lie to protect itself. And it doesn't wait 21 years to work up the courage to speak. It only tells you exactly what happened, one entry at a time, in the same order the girl who wrote it lived through it. David Cole pulled on a pair of latex gloves and opened the book. The authors from 1997 held nothing but the ordinary worries of a 15-year-old. Algebra, poetry assignments, her love for Zoe and Chloe. But by September of 1998, the handwriting changed. Faster, slanted, afraid.
September 21st. Thomas asked me to stay after class again. Everyone else had already left, and the school was so quiet. He read me a poem he wrote himself. His voice was so soft it made my chest hurt. He told me I'm different from everyone else in this small, suffocating town. He said I am the only light in these dark woods. I know he's married. I know he has 2 children. But he's the only person who's ever really seen me.
By October, someone else had noticed too. And her reaction wasn't jealousy. It was recognition.
October 12th. Chloe knows. She cornered me in the girls' restroom after rehearsal and grabbed my arm so hard I'll have bruises tomorrow. She screamed that he doesn't love me, that he's just playing with me, that he's hers. I wanted to hate her for it, but when she finally let go, her hands were shaking, and for 1 second she didn't look angry at all. She looked like she was drowning too, like she'd been drowning a lot longer than I had, and nobody at her own dinner table had ever noticed. I told Zoe everything. Zoe held me while I cried and promised she'd protect me. But I'm scared of what Chloe might do when she's this desperate.
2 weeks later, the fear in the diary's pages stopped being about Chloe entirely.
October 28th. The worst has happened. I'm nearly 3 weeks late. I told Thomas after school today. His face turned gray, then red. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me until my head hit the blackboard. He said if I tell a single soul, he'll make sure I disappear from this town completely. He left bruises on my neck. I don't know how to save my baby. I don't know how to save myself.
On November 8th, someone finally did something about it.
November 8th. Zoe found me crying behind the gymnasium and saw the marks on my neck. She forced the truth out of me. I've never seen her so angry. But she didn't panic. She held my hands and whispered, "We're getting you out of here, Abby, and that monster is going to pay for what he did." She has a plan. She calls it our escape. She says she found a way to get us to Portland.
The final entry was written the night before the storm.
November 11th. Tomorrow night, the storm will cover our tracks. Zoe set up a meeting. She told Thomas we're meeting him at the old hunting cabin for the money to start over, or she'll go straight to the sheriff. Chloe is coming with us. Zoe says we can't leave her behind because the second she realizes we're gone, she'll tell her parents everything just to feel like she still matters to someone. I don't trust Chloe. I don't trust this storm. Tomorrow night, we either find our freedom in Portland or the snow buries us all.
The diary ended there. The next 3 pages had been torn violently from the spine. David didn't close the book. He tilted the cover toward the light and found one last mark. Pencil, scratched hurriedly into the raw cardboard of the back cover, smudged but legible. Vance said to meet at the shelter in Portland Harbor. Z.
21 years, and you thought no one would ever come looking for you, Mr. Vance.
Thomas Vance had vanished from Blackwood the same winter the girls did. A man doesn't disappear that completely, that cleanly, without a reason to keep running, and without somewhere he'd hidden for 21 years, learning exactly how not to be found. Guilt is a patient hunter. You can run to the edge of the world, change your name, and bury your past under 21 winters of silence. But sooner or later, someone always comes looking for what you buried. David Cole had learned one thing in 15 years of chasing men like Thomas Vance. Never knock on their door with just a hunch. So before he ever reached the cabin, he found something Vance didn't know he'd left behind. An ex-wife.
I wondered if this day would come, Detective. I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm also not going to hand you everything on my porch.
I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to think about it. 3 girls never came home. One of them was 17 years old.
Sarah said nothing more that morning, but David had spent enough years reading faces to know the difference between a woman who had nothing to hide and a woman still deciding whether she could carry a secret any further. He left his card, and he drove north toward the cabin. The man who opened the door looked 20 years older than his 57 years, but his voice, when it came, was still the voice of a teacher, measured, careful, built for talking his way out of things.
Can I help you?
Detective David Cole, State Police. I have questions about 3 former students of yours, Zoe and Chloe Miller. Abigail Ward?
That's a name from another life, Detective. Terrible thing what happened to those girls. The storm took a lot of people that winter.
The storm didn't write an anonymous complaint about a locked classroom door.
David set the photocopy on the table, the letter filed 2 days before the girls vanished, accusing Vance of spending private, locked-door hours with certain female students.
Anonymous letters mean nothing, Detective. Jealous colleagues, small-town gossip. I taught poetry to teenagers for 11 years. People talk.
Then explain this.
David read aloud, slowly, without mercy, the October 28th diary entry. The bruises, the threat. If you tell a single soul, I will make sure you disappear. Vance's composure didn't shatter all at once. It cracked the way ice cracks, one thin line at first.
You don't understand what it was like. I was 34, married, 2 children, a career I'd spent my whole life building. If the truth came out...
A 17-year-old girl is dead, Mr. Vance. I don't care what it would have cost you.
Just then, the door opened. Sarah Vance stepped inside, a rusted metal lockbox held tightly against her chest. She hadn't come because David had convinced her. She'd come because sometime after he left her porch, she'd finally run out of reasons not to.
It's over, Thomas. I've carried this for 21 years. I'm done carrying it for you.
Something in Thomas Vance finally gave way.
I'm not a killer, Detective. I swear to God I never wanted anyone to die. Zoe called me the morning of the 11th. She said she knew everything, that if I didn't give them money to get to Portland and start over, she'd go straight to the sheriff. I agreed to meet them at the old hunting cabin. I told myself the storm would just be cover for a conversation, nothing more.
But Chloe came too.
Yes, she'd completely lost her sanity, Detective, but not out of cruelty, out of hunger. She just wanted once to matter as much as her sister did. When she realized Abby was carrying my child, something in her broke completely. She flew at Abby, screaming that he was hers, that Abby was nothing but a carpenter's daughter. And underneath all that screaming, I remember thinking even then that she didn't sound angry. She sounded like a girl who'd spent her whole life being told she was the spare.
For the first time, Thomas Vance sounded less like a man confessing and more like a man still trying, even now, to make himself the most sympathetic person in the room. David let him keep talking. Men like this always did.
I tried to separate them. I shoved Chloe back, hard, just to get her off Abby. The floor was slick with tracked-in snow. She lost her footing. Her head struck the iron grate of the wood stove. That sound. I hear it every single night when I close my eyes.
Chloe Miller did not survive the fall. In the panic that followed, Abby ran screaming into the storm. Zoe went after her, and Thomas Vance, alone with a dead 17-year-old girl and a lifetime he refused to lose, pried up the cabin's floorboards and buried her in the frozen earth beneath it.
I told myself the other 2 would freeze before they ever reached town. The next morning, I requested an emergency transfer to the border. I never came back.
Sarah opened the lockbox. Inside, 3 crimson wool scarves, a cassette recorder, and a letter she had hidden, never sent, for 21 years. David pressed play. Through a wall of static, a frightened 17-year-old voice filled the cabin.
My name is Abigail Ward. If anyone is listening to this, I'm probably already dead. Zoe is trying to save me. If anything happens to us tonight, it was Thomas Vance. He's the one who did this to us.
Chloe Miller's remains had waited 21 years under a cabin floor, but Abby and Zoe had made it out into the storm alive.
If Abby didn't survive the winter, then who has Zoe been protecting for 21 years? And where is she now?
Silence is not always the absence of sound. Sometimes it's a fortress, built by someone who no longer trusts herself to speak the truth out loud, brick by brick, for 21 years. Nobody inside these granite walls knew the woman they called Sister Beatrice by any other name. David Cole found the monastery on the frozen edge of Portland Harbor, guided by nothing more than 4 pencil words scratched into the back cover of a dead girl's diary.
We know her as Sister Beatrice. She arrived in the winter of '99, skeletal, shivering, terrified. She never spoke a single word after that, Detective. Not out of inability, out of choice.
Is she in good health, Mother Irene?
Her heart is weaker than it should be for a woman her age. Our doctor has warned us for months now. 21 years of carrying a secret like that. It doesn't leave a body unmarked, even when the mouth never opens to let it out.
David found her in the courtyard, kneeling in the snow beside an orphaned child, wrapping a wool blanket around small shoulders. When she turned and saw the crimson scarf in his outstretched hand, 21 years of silence collapsed in a single breath. Zoe Miller could not speak, but her hands, trembling, reached for the notepad David placed in front of her, and she began to write.
That night, when Abby ran into the blizzard, I ran after her. I found her hours later in an abandoned hay barn, freezing, sobbing, clutching her stomach. I knew we couldn't go back to Blackwood. Thomas was a monster. Chloe was dead. There was nothing left to go back to. I got Abby to Portland. An old woman near the harbour took us in and asked no questions. On June 5th, 1999, Abby went into labour. There were no doctors, only me. She lost too much blood. Her body just gave up. Before her last breath, she put her son in my arms and whispered, "Protect him, Zoe. Give him the life we never had." We named him Dylan. I placed her silver locket around his neck and brought him to the Portland orphanage myself. He was adopted by a family in Oregon. Then I came here. I promised God that if he kept Dylan safe, I would never speak another word. Because if I spoke, even once, even to a priest, even to myself, the cabin would become real again, and I would have to live inside it.
David read every word twice. Somewhere on the other side of the country, a young man was alive, carrying a locket around his neck he had never understood. He looked up from the page.
You could have told someone, Zoe. Anyone. Anonymously, even. You could have let this town know Thomas Vance was guilty without giving up your silence completely. Why 21 years of nothing?
Zoe's pen hovered over the notepad for a long moment. Then it stopped. She looked at David, not with confusion, but with something closer to exhaustion, and set the pen down without writing an answer. David had gotten every fact he came for: the confession, the dates, the locations. But that one question, not what she had done, but whether, after everything, she believed she deserved to be forgiven for it. Zoe Miller chose one last time to leave unanswered. Every dark story eventually reaches a place where the air is different. For 20-year-old Dylan Miller, an EMT on the misty cliffs of Astoria, Oregon, that place had always simply been home. He didn't know yet that his life had been bought at a price he could never repay.
Dylan Miller.
Yeah. Can I help you, officer?
Detective David Cole. I flew in from Maine. I need to talk to you about your birth mother and about the silver locket you've worn since you were a baby.
Dylan's hand went instinctively to his collar.
My adoptive parents always told me she died in childbirth. That's all they ever knew. Do you know who she was?
I know everything, Dylan. And it's time you did too.
For 2 hours, David laid out the truth. 3 girls in crimson scarves, a cabin in a historic storm, the cowardice of a man named Thomas Vance, and a sister who ran through a blizzard and never once stopped protecting him.
Your mother didn't abandon you. She died giving you life. And a woman named Zoe spent 21 years in complete silence just to make sure you never had to grow up carrying any of this.
Dylan read his mother's handwriting for the first time. Her fear, her love, her final plea. He closed his fist around the locket and let out a single, ragged sob against the sand of the Pacific.
She didn't even know me. And she loved me enough to die for me.
3 days later, Dylan flew back to Maine with David Cole. He wanted, finally, to meet the woman who had given up her voice to keep him safe. He never got the chance. The morning his plane landed in Portland, Mother Erin called. Sister Beatrice had passed quietly in her sleep. Her heart, weakened exactly as the doctors had warned for months, had simply stopped.
I don't think she was waiting to get better, Detective. I think she was waiting for this. For him to be safe. For the truth to finally be told, in her own words, one last time.
Using the directions from Zoe's letter, investigators excavated the frozen ground beneath the ruined hunting cabin. There, after 21 years, they found Chloe Miller, still wrapped in a fading crimson scarf. Thomas Vance was sentenced to life without parole for manslaughter, child exploitation, and the concealment of a body. After the funeral, Dylan walked alone through the snow to an overgrown lot behind Blackwood High School, where 3 young maple trees stood, planted years earlier by a girl who never got the chance to say goodbye properly. 2 unmarked stones rested beneath the branches.
Your play was never performed. But what you did for me was real. I'll live a good life. I promise. For both of you.
He placed the silver locket in the snow beside the stones and stood, watching the wind move through branches that hadn't existed the last time anyone in Blackwood had told the truth. Dylan Miller carries 2 names in his blood now. A mother who sacrificed everything for a son she never got to raise, and a father capable of things Dylan still can't say out loud, even to himself. 20 years old, and still figuring out which parts of himself belong to which. Zoe Miller answered every question Detective Cole ever asked her, except one. He asked her why, in 21 years, she never once told anyone the truth, not even anonymously. She never wrote down an answer. If you were Zoe, would you have stayed silent too? Tell us why in the comments below.